All right, so we should be in good shape to get started here. Jammed, everybody. Familiar faces, new folks here in Discord. If you're tuning in on YouTube, this is 1HTV. Today is our Monday broadcast. We got Dow News for the first hour, and then we're going to bring on Flow Science from the Cannabis Genome DAO. This is a pretty rad public goods project. Directly in line with some of my personal interests. Now, in all seriousness, it's going to be a pretty serious talk, and we're going to get into concept of decentralized data and decentralized science and funding. So it extends far beyond cannabis, what they're building. They're also collaborating with, of course, Ocean, the Ocean token and the Ocean marketplace to help again, decentralize access to data for scientific research. So we'll get into this the second hour today, right? Flow Science is going to join us in at the top of the hour, around 1 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow evening, we'll have another episode with Billy, late night, starting at 9:30 Eastern. As far as I know, the Wednesday show is also still coming off. This is a weekly show on NFTs and gaming. So you can check out again, 1HTV. Subscribe there and you'll be able to see all of these shows and their live streaming in all of its enhanced glory. But jammed, everybody, let's go ahead and get into the news today. Edu is, in fact, on his way to ETHCC, so he's not going to be able to join us, I don't believe. He may join us halfway through. We'll see. His flight was delayed, so we all wish him a safe travel over there to Paris, and looking forward to getting a recap on his experience there as well next Monday. That's a nice thing if you're following on crypto Twitter. The events going on around the DAO space and in crypto. ETH Barcelona was the most recent Ethereum specific conference, and that went off, I guess, about 2 weeks ago. So now we got ETHCC. If you're following that on crypto Twitter, we'll also have some folks on the ground there, as it were, able to report on their experiences next Monday. So we wish the best to Edu. We're gonna go ahead and come over. We're gonna get started with the Messari governor, and I'm gonna be using this each week going forward here. If you're not familiar with Messari, MESSARI .io. All right, and this is if you're looking on YouTube right now, this is essentially the landing page, the front end. It's got a lot of the technicals and price for various crypto assets, and up here at the top you can navigate around to different tools that they have available, most of them for free. So we're of course going to be using the governor, and we're going to scroll down. Well, you can scroll down here, or you can simply click then on the second tier navigation menu where it says proposals. And this is, I'm convinced right now, is the absolute best front end aggregate, filter, search, discover what's going on around projects with tokenized governance. So we have a number of stories I want to share with you today. We'll just go top to bottom and sort of explore a number of them here that are going on or have recently passed. And then we'll actually segue over to Snapshot to take a look at a few that are not aggregated here on Messari yet. Some big blue chips, actually. I'd be interested to know backstory on that. I'm sure they'll be up here in the near future. But we're going to start with ApeCoin. So if folks remember... And by the way, I know that Billy and some others are in the audience. If people are interested to come up and chat about any of these stories or ask questions, really want to encourage you to raise your hand. We're in the process of generating some really cool incentives around specific types of engagement, the content that we're doing each week. But just wanted to say, on any of these stories, if you're interested in asking a question, you don't want to ask it verbally, so you just want to type it, you go up to OneHive TV, or you can raise your hand. I can see you here in the Discord. Will bring you up to ask a question, add a comment. But we're starting here with ApeCoin. So this was the token that was launched earlier this year around the Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT community, and they of course are using these tokens for DAO governance, the ApeCoin DAO, and just want to comment again on the Messari governor here. What's nice is that you have direct links to you have a say bespoke. I don't know if that's the right word or not. It's basically it's a custom summation here. Okay, a custom summary of what the what is contained within the conversation or the proposal that you won't find elsewhere. So like this text here is, and this goes for all the proposals active on the Missouri governor. It provides a really nice summation. So if it's something that attracts your interest, you can simply go up to the upper right and click on forum discussion. And if it's up on the Snap for an off-chain vote, it will also have that link. But just coming back to the summation before we go to the forum, this is a proposal to set up an ApeCoin DAO community Discord. Now it says Discord channel, and I'm sort of unclear on this, to be honest, if folks have any additional insight, but it's basically standing up a community Discord for the ApeCoin DAO community, and it includes specific Ape token allocations requested to compensate the contributors that would create this Discord. So the bottom line here is about 78,000 Ape is the ask, which is a little bit under $500,000, I believe, at the current price right now for the Ape token. Somebody can check my math on that, but I know it's over 400K. To request the standing up of this Discord, as well as compensation, I think per year is the budget here, and you can take a look at the breakdown if you're interested. People are ApeCoin holders, obviously. This would be of relevance, perhaps not concern in a bad way, but would be something that you might want to know about, as it is, if it moves to the vote, obviously will be a relatively significant outlay. I don't know that I haven't done sort of analysis of the Ape DAO treasury or anything along those lines, but you know, one of the things that comes to my mind, at least when I see these types of governance activities, is it's like, okay, so even though it's AIP 77, compared to some other DAOs, they're relatively new, right? And you know, you look at any DAO, and we know that from just a sell pressure perspective, if you are incentivizing all contributor activity through liquid tokens of your DAO, you're creating perpetual sell pressure, right? The value that it creates needs to obviously, it's pretty straightforward. It needs to be larger than the pressure created by the compensation itself. But it is, again, something to be aware of. Your Ape token holder, you know, these types of proposals these are emissions, right? It's almost like mining through contribution. And I think some people that are new to the Ethereum space, right, this is a certain conceptual model that might be useful, just to understand how a circulating supply of certain tokens changes over time. There are some DAOs that are, you know, that have had active treasury management strategies in place, and they were able to generate significant sums of stable coins during the bull run last year, and really for the first quarter of this year in certain ways, but particularly the second half of last year. And those DAOs are in a different position as far as contributors and compensation are concerned, than DAOs that launched more recently and simply haven't been able to, even if they have the desire, right, have been able to execute on treasury management strategies to diversify outside their own project token. So we just wrapped up here, folks. They're just joining us, GM here in Discord, if you're joining us on YouTube. I want to remind folks, if you're here in Discord, scroll into the top, Happening Now, 1HTV Down News, that bit.ly link, click on it. It'll take you to YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and you'll be able to see some cool overlays for what we're talking about during our broadcasts. So moving on from ApeCoin, coming back to the Missouri governor here, we're going to move on to BitDAO and Giveth. Okay, this is an interesting story, folks who are familiar with Giveth. They're a super BFF of us here at OneHive, and in general the ecosystem in and around Gnosis Chain. They got an amazing project. If you don't know Giveth, you're new to this space, go to giveth.io. If you're looking on YouTube here, you can see how to spell Giveth, Giveth. Some people call it GiveEth. If it's easier to remember it that way, then go for it. Lauren pronounces it Giveth, so I'll go with Giveth. Giveth.io, folks. It's a pretty transformational crypto project. It's a lot different than others that you've probably seen before. And this proposal is on the BitDAO forum, and it's actually, well, there are details in a Google document, but I don't think it's been taken to a vote yet, so this is still preliminary. It's on the BitDAO forum, and it is, for a little bit of context on BitDAO, again, if you're looking on YouTube, I'll put some of these, I'll put the homepage, etc., on screen here. BitDAO is essentially a crypto venture organization And you can read more at bitdao.io. I'll try to drop these links as we go. Slow myself down a little bit. Go to OneHive TV chat channel, folks. If you want to take a look here, I'll try to post up as many of these links as I can going forward. It's a collective of builders and stakeholders enabling mutually beneficial Web3 ecosystems of people, products, and public goods. So without getting into this specifically, they got their documentation, everything linked up straight from the front end there. And we'll go back to their governance or their forum here. This is essentially a token sale. And if we scroll down, you can read the summation of what Giveth is, and it talks about its liquidity opportunities. I think the critical points here about 2/3 of the way down following the vision alignment, which is up to 8% of the funding token swap. So it looks like the range is between 4 and 6 million worth of give to help diversify the BitDAO treasury. And it doesn't, I don't believe on this specific write-up I don't believe there's any, it is specified the asset that would be used to swap, although that obviously the stable coins here are implied, USDC, USDT, or DAI. And in general right now, if we look at the results on the temperature check, there's a lot of people in favor. This is I think co-posted by Griff and Yaz here on the BitDAO forum again. And again, in this case, if you're a give holder, okay, I think that essentially a stable coin raise along these lines is something to be bullish about. It certainly will give the Giveth project a significant amount of runway. And from everything that I've read here, I think BitDAO is an excellent, seems to be an excellent partner and interlocutor in this process. So again, this is something that is on the BitDAO forum. I'll share a link to this right now in the OneHive TV chat channel. You can join their discourse to like or explore further this proposal, take part in the conversation, of course. We're all about participation in governance here in OneHTV. So if you're just learning about Giveth for the first time, again, Giveth.io, definitely a project worth checking out. Their token is on Gnosis chain as well as mainnet. This is not financial advice, never is. We don't give that here whatsoever. However, it is worth knowing about excellent projects here and how you can support them. In this case, again, the top line here, it seems to be that Giveth is exploring a certain partnership with a venture group to have a stable coin raised in exchange for the Give token. All right, once again, GM to everybody who's joining us here in the Discord on YouTube. Make sure to head over to YouTube and subscribe if you haven't done so already. You can see the front end for the Messari governor that we're going through here for today's stories. If you have questions or comments, the OneHive TV chat channel is a place to be. You can always, of course, raise your hand as well in the audience here on the stage if you wish to come up and ask any questions about stories that we're chatting about here. GM to everybody. So we're back over here at the Messari governor front end. We're going to scroll down a bit here, actually, and take a look at Optimism. If folks aren't aware, Optimism is one of the two major L2s right now. So people often refer to Optimism and Arbitrum in the same sentence. They had their airdrop and token launch a little bit earlier this year, referring to Optimism, that is. The OP token is live. Arbitrum has not yet launched a token. However, there is the Arbitrum Odyssey, which we're not going to talk about at this moment in time, but if you're not aware, you can simply Google it up, right? Arbitrum Odyssey, take a look how you might get involved. Right now, I believe it is still paused. People can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I think that Arbitrum Odyssey process is most likely, again, we don't know, but it seems certain that now that Optimism launched a token, that Arbitrum will also launch a token. It seems as though this Odyssey process is sort of gamified onboarding to the chain. It seems like a likely precursor to a liquid token launch should it happen. But we wanted to keep an eye on these two projects is the sort of the point here, the reason I want to come over here to Optimism. And specifically, before we get into this specific proposal, I want to draw everybody's attention to something else about the Messari front end, the Messari UI rather, that I think is really cool and worth checking out. So if you're here, scrolling through proposals and you click into a specific one, you can click on the project icon and it will take you over to a really nice summation of everything having to do with this project all in one place. Increasingly, I find myself using the Messari tool for like anything that I need, because it's not just if you want to check the price of a token and see a decent looking chart, but you can really drill down to the fundamentals of any specific project. And it's, again, really good summative content, easy to access. They have the overview and proposals sort of here, easy to toggle between. I know I'm sort of shilling this hard, but I find it a really useful tool. I mean, they even have GitHub linked up right within the project front end. So I think, they're thinking of everything here as far as how to create a hub of information around crypto projects in the space in general. So has a nice summation of what Optimism is as a roll up on the Ethereum blockchain. We've covered this project, of course, in the past when they had their token launch, and it's not a dual token model, but it's like there are these two houses that they refer to in their governance structure, and one is where the OP token is used and exercised as a means of governance, and then the other has to do with the funding, I believe the retroactive funding of public goods. And so this is like a grants arm of Optimism, and the governance for the grants arm, I believe, is intended to function separately from the tokenized governance arm. So some innovation there in terms of this like bifurcation of their governance structure. Interesting there on Optimism. If you are an OP holder, if you're somebody who got an OP token airdrop, for example, and you didn't sell, or maybe you bid most recently when tokens were all the way on the floor, enjoying a little pump right now. Who knows how long it'll last? But if you're an OP token holder, I think people, again, along the lines of what I was mentioning earlier with ApeDAO and the ApeCoin, right? It's not ApeDAO, it's ApeCoin DAO. Okay. These grants and governance funding proposals, these are being funded, right, with the OP token. And so in essence, right, if you are a token holder and you want to be informed about circulating supply and emissions and all of this, I think people should be paying attention to these sorts of things, right? This is essentially how new tokens are going to come into existence. For the Optimism network, as well as any other tokenized protocol, until they have other treasury options. So in this case, we just clicked on the top proposal here to give people a flavor of what's going on the Optimism governance side of things. As with any other DAO, you can head over to their discourse. This is gov.optimism. So it's not forum.optimism. This is their URL is a little bit different. They have gov.optimism.io, and that'll take you to their governance front end here. Looks familiar. So let's talk about this one specifically. So X Token Terminal, they have a Twitter page that people can take a look at. Their project enables you to start up a Uniswap v3 LP position very easily. So, and that's their project, right? They're trying to make Uni v3 liquidity providing more accessible, which if you've tried to do it yourself, you see the value in a product like that. Let's put it this way: if you haven't attempted, if you have done. Okay, I'm going to back up. Folks in the audience, I'm just going to say this really quick, right? If you have not done, and if you've not learned to LP on Uni v2, you should do that. You can use a really small amount of money. This is not financial advice. I'm not telling you to use this as an investment strategy. I'm saying people should understand what's possible with this technology now. So like if you have 2 tokens, go deposit them in Uni v3, some small amount, test it. If you've never done it before, you should do that side of things. Most everybody has done the swap. If you haven't LP'd before, you should do it so you know what it is and how it works. I'm not saying you do a large amount, but it's worth doing if you haven't. I don't want to make assumptions. So for those of you in the audience who have done that on Uni v2, let's say you're actually somebody who's an active LP, have been, right, for the last, year to 18 months plus. The LP experience in terms of creating and calibrating your liquidity position on the latest version of Uniswap is no small task. It's much more complex than V2, and that complexity is certainly not a bad thing, because it enables specific types of, it attracts specific type of market actors, probably specifically in the legacy space, with really specific targeted tooling, which is great. Okay, but for most people, it becomes unapproachable. So, anyways, X Token Terminal project, you might want to take a look at X Token Terminal. They have put up a phase 1 proposal on the Optimism forum here. Okay, and they're essentially they're requesting liquidity incentives of a sort. And so the big picture here is you have projects that are building on Optimism, that are many of whom are innovating based on existing tech, and they have begun the process of submitting these proposals. So I guess the two top takeaways here, if you're in the audience, would be if you're a project, or you're working with or around a project that is considering deploying on Optimism, there's all sorts of projects that are securing liquidity incentives right now. This is obviously open, so I would encourage people to check this out. Again, gov.optimism.io. On the other hand, if you're just an OP token holder and you're not necessarily working on a project that's deploying or anything along those lines, it's worth seeing, and we'll track right on this very show here. We'll track and see. There's a lot of these phase 1 proposals coming into Optimism, and it'll be interesting to see how many of them, which of them, really move on to phase 2, which hits it first, because that'll obviously tell you where these emissions for the OP token are going to be directed over the next, who knows, right? Couple months, perhaps next year plus. So as far as Optimism and L2s, if you're bullish on L2s, and you want to be tracking the nerdy tokenomics of the OP token, we'll be doing that going forward. And that's just a little bit of a taste there. If you're interested in getting into the details, there are a lot, as you can see here up on YouTube, there are a lot of phase 1 proposals up here on their front end. So we'll be tracking them, keeping tabs, keeping on the pulse of the Optimism project. All right. Coming back over to the front of the dashboard, the next thing I think we want to dive into here is a project from around our block, which is Shapeshift. They've had a very active DAO for a year now, right? So they just celebrated their anniversary of DAOing it last week. So I want to give a big shout out to the Shapeshift community. One of the first, fully centralized orgs to go full DAO, and despite all of the challenges that presents for any organization of humans, they have survived thus far, and I think are innovating around some really interesting partnerships and ideas as far as DeFi aggregation and just a general Web3 hub. And so right now they are the community is debating a whole bunch of different things, including this increased allocation to the TMDC. This is their treasury management committee. And so we'll open this up on their forum just to take a deeper look. The TMDC was created last November as sort of a decentralized treasury management committee, and they have received periodic allocations of the Fox token, which they then turn and use through various DeFi strategies and to return yield as a source of revenue for the DAO. So if you're interested in learning more about their past activities, you can definitely head over here to the forum, as well as take a look at some of the videos we did towards the end of last year. I know those are out of date now in terms of the content, but in general, you can get an idea for how active these folks really have been, and that has not slowed down despite market conditions. So in this case, they're requesting an additional allocation of Fox tokens. And so again, if you're a Fox holder, this is definitely something you want to take a look at. This is not emissions per se, right? In other words, the Fox is being allocated through a proposal like this is not necessarily, it's not a funding proposal. So this Fox instead will be used to, as we said, generate yield, which in turn is used to generate stable coins that can be used for contributor compensation. So this is a little bit different in terms of its correlation to emissions and circulating supply. This Fox is not getting, market sold or these types of things. But you can take a look at all of their strategies, of course, as a DAO and as a decentralized committee. They have all the previous proposals linked up if you're interested in taking a look, as well as looking at their allocations spreadsheet and their records, their ledger, etc. is all transparent as well. Let me go ahead and get that linked up here in the Discord here. I'll just drop a link in OneHive TV chat. Pause for just a second, say GM to everybody here in Discord. Folks, if you're joining us on YouTube, we have everything we're talking about here as a visual overlay. And so you can take a look at the diagrams, proposals, different web pages, etc. that we're talking about. And make sure to hit that subscribe button, bell notification. If you're looking for a link, head over to YouTube. Just type in 1HTV. It'll take you to our channel. If you're here in Discord, scroll to the top, that bit.ly link happening now. 1HTV Down News, the bit.ly link will take you to our YouTube as well. Head on over there, and we'll drop our links in the OneHive TV chat channel here in the Discord, and we'll try to drop a few in the YouTube chat as well. Edu is on his way to ETHCC in Paris, so unfortunately he wasn't able to join us today, but he'll be back with us next week. Let's go ahead and take a look here. We're going to move on to Uniswap. So give me just a second here. We're going to come back to the Messari front end, and we'll go the governor proposals. And as I mentioned before, you can filter, right? You can filter through any DAO that you want. The status of the proposal or governance activity, the category, etc. So scroll down to Uni, and there are actually two that we want to cover here. So we'll go to Uni's homepage and take a look down here. They have a couple of proposals that have been active recently. And so we'll take a look at this upgrade to a flexible voting enabled governor. So this is in the forum discussion phase. This is not something that has been moved to formal vote within the Uniswap community, but it is an interesting proposal here, and the team behind the proposal has also shared some good visuals on this via social media, and so I'll get those up on screen as well for folks who are watching on YouTube. Give me just a second here. The name of the project is Scope Lift. If people are familiar with this specific group, but they are looking to streamline DAO governance, make it more efficient in some critical ways. So I'm going to put actually their Twitter post up on screen right now on YouTube, and people can follow along with this, and then we'll double back to the Uniswap discussion. Right? It seems as though there's some positive sentiment to adopt this tooling for the Uniswap protocol governance, which by virtue of obviously being a core DeFi primitive here, any adjustments to their governance protocol would be something interesting to take a look at, and probably trend setting in the industry. So Scope Lift here, they announced this flexible voting. That's the name that they're giving to the tool that they developed, extension of Open Zeppelin Governor, funded by Uniswap grants. So Uniswap helped to set this in motion in the past, and allows the construction of new mechanisms making governance participation easier, cheaper, and more accessible. They go on to tell us that it enables all kinds of new use cases, things like voting with tokens while earning yield in DeFi. Okay, so this is something that folks in OneHive have talked about quite a bit with other DAOs as well. The idea that participating in governance trades off with the use of those tokens in DeFi is this is such an obvious pain point that needs solving, and I think that this is something cool to get excited about, right? So just to put it another way, we were talking about becoming an LP earlier in today's show, right? If I want to be a liquidity provider, or if I want to participate in single-sided staking, I don't want those tokens to then be inoperable for participating in governance. Right. The single-sided staking, of course, has been solved by has been active, not just solved, but active by OneHive and Gardens DAOs for a while now. So, for example, if you're a Give token holder, talking about Giveth earlier, you can stake, or Bright, for example, Agave, I believe, as well. If you want to stake your tokens to earn yield, single-sided, so you're not experiencing any type of impermanent loss, then you can do that right in the front end on Gardens or on the Giveth dApp. And so you can be earning yield on those tokens and at the same time participate in DAO governance. So Scopelift has been working on that as well. The other example was voting on L2 with bridged tokens. Next is shielded voting. So this would be privacy in voting. And the other that they listed here was cheaper subsidized signature-based voting. Okay, I think particularly the shielded voting is something that people might find interesting. This is another topic that I'd love to hear people's perspective on, debate. And if people here in the audience have any thoughts, please feel free to raise your hand. We'll bring you up on stage here to chat about any of these things. But, right now, the idea that, well, it ultimately goes to the heart of transparent, or what do they call it, the Australian ballot, I'm going to screw that up, but a private ballot being cast. There is an interesting debate because there are trade-offs in both scenarios. Right now, in crypto, if you're participating in governance, unless you've gone to some significant effort, it's going to be public, right? And most people, that's kind of the default. So that comes with all types of externalities, right, that you may or may not want. And so allowing people to, if you have a significant token share, to exercise that right without going to insane difficulties, enabling that to be private is something that I think people will be interested as well. On YouTube, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the graphic that they have here in the tweet thread. And it's a simple before and after graphic. Again, if you're interested in seeing what we're talking about right now, the bit.ly link at the top of the Discord, OneHive TV, OneHTV DAO News. Click on that bit.ly link. It'll take it over to YouTube, where we're streaming live right now. The before situation is you have your governance token holders, and they have depositing into a lending contract on the left, and they can't vote. Okay, so in this case, if you have your tokens locked up in a smart contract earning yield, then you're not able to participate in the governance process. In this case, what they have done, sort of innovated here, is you deposit in the lending contract. From this contract, votes are delegated right back to the individual, and you have a new delegate contract, and that enables you to participate. So they obviously have worked on a number of these specific, I'm going to call it like obstacles, friction points for governance participation. Again, this is Scopelift, at Scopelift on crypto Twitter, on Twitter. And let's take a look here at the conversation on the governance forum for Uniswap. Back to that initial conversation. This went up, I guess, 4 days ago. Something to keep an eye on. And obviously something that came out of the Uniswap labs, funded by Uniswap grants, rather. This is something that's already within their ecosystem and been developed as such. So it may be something where Uniswap is considering some new innovations in their governance. We'll follow that as the story unfolds. Got one more thing to share with all y'all from Uniswap here. And actually, I'm going to go to the snapshot vote on this because it has, I believe it's concluded already. So again, if you're watching on YouTube, let's go ahead and check out the status here. Yeah, it concluded last Friday, I believe, and had almost unanimous support. And this was to provide a project named Rage Trade with an additional use grant. So this is a perpetual protocol. I'm not some epic trader, and if there are people, super degens in the audience that would like to, share insights on either perpetuals or Rage Trade in particular as a project, feel free to jump on it. Raise your hand, we'll bring it up. You want to ask any questions? But the bottom line here, as far as the benefits to Uniswap, like why Uniswap might fund this project or extend, it looks like a funding extension, is additional on-chain liquidity is cited as one potential reason. Rage Trade is doing some R&D, designing efficient LP strategies. So essentially, using the new tool that we were referring to earlier, right? The sort of complex liquidity provisioning tool that Uniswap has deployed with their third version. This Rage Trade project is maintaining that they're conducting R&D. Essentially, you need people to use this new tech over a certain duration of time with the intent to track and analyze different approaches to its use in order to figure out optimal ways, right, that people can benefit from it. So this is somewhat unquantified here, but it's already designed new LP strategy known as the 80/20, and obviously incorporates Curve. If you're somebody who's deep into LP strategies, perhaps you've heard of Rage Trade. Wow. If not, then it's definitely a project to take a look at. They have significant support from over 3,000 wallets within the Uniswap community. And the third here is liquid and compostable on-chain perpetuals, whole new world of Uniswap spot strategies. So we'll bring up the Rage Trade project really quick here on screen. What this enables you to do is long and short different, in essence, right? Long and short different assets. And let us see right now, what do they got? RIC and Arbitrum Rinkeby. I'm pretty I don't know if they're live or not yet. We can take a look here. I will double back here. For some reason, I have a little bit of issue with my wallet, but this is passed. Okay, so in this case, this is going to be an additional use grant to this Rage Trade, which I don't believe, again, is not a Uniswap token issuance. It's more about enabling them to continue building on top of UniB3, which, of course, is not open source. Okay, it has to be licensed. So as far as, again, Uniswap, just recapping what we've discussed as far as the project goes, we have some work with this perpetual protocol, long, short, different assets on ETH, and enabling them to continue their research in and around optimizing with V3 strategies. And we have the potential innovation in Uniswap governance, token governance. So keep an eye on that. And again, as we said, check out Scopelift if you want to nerd out on the improvements they're looking to make to the ease of access to DAO governance. Let's take a look. I believe we have one more story to wrap up before we conclude for the news today. We're going to have a guest on here at the top of the hour to talk about decentralized science and the cannabis genome. So we got a really cool conversation coming up. Let us see. We have one more I'll share with you, and we'll take a look at it via the Messari front end again. CityDAO. And I'm not sure if folks are familiar with CityDAO. We've covered them in the past and talk about the interesting work that they're doing, at least here in the United States. A little bit of quick context on CityDAO. We'll bring up here the project and see what Messari says. They are based out of Wyoming, and really trying to DAO it within the legal framework that was created in that state, I believe, early last year. So here's their summation on Messari. CityDAO is building a network of assets on chain, starting with a single parcel of land in Wyoming. Each parcel of land is an NFT that can be owned collectively by the DAO or by individuals. So for those of you who have been listeners of the show, you know that one of the things we've always arrived at or sort of discussed and heard different perspectives on. Last week we had Joseph on to talk about this. Billy Jesu shared his perspective in the past as well as others. It really is this contact point between the Web3, like the digital world, and the physical world. You cannot, and people have said this before, right? DAOs are very good at the digital stuff. Okay, but when you start talking about, say, ownership of fill in the blank, in this case, if it's a parcel of land, if it's, last week we're talking about vacation properties, people talking about art, like the Constitution DAO as an example. Okay, so, a DAO itself, a completely on-chain DAO with no LLC, for example, you're gonna you hit a roadblock, right? Because you can't actually take, in this case, we'll talk about land, you can't actually take possession of a parcel of land without some type of existing legal framework. And of course, this goes back then to the Wyoming attempt to do this. People have been, they have a lot of praise, a lot of criticism. Is somewhat divisive, this Wyoming DAO framework, and this is not the time or place to sort of get into the details, and I'm, of course, not a lawyer. But, you know, CityDAO's approach to try and work within this framework and innovate here is really admirable, in my opinion. And so we've followed them from time to time, and they have an interesting proposal that has come up recently here, and it is this proposal to acquire a baby parcel for NFT leases. And this is the CityDAO Improvement Plan 102. And the summary reads as follows. This proposal aims to serve as a prototype for the big parcel, project by purchasing a parcel of land in St. Louis Valley of Colorado and subdividing the land into smaller lots. Each sub-parcel would represent certain rights related to each lot of the land. And the project would allow CityDAO to experiment with NFT land leases for CryptoDAO citizens to move towards land ownership NFTs. Upon successful launching baby parcel land NFTs, this proposal approves the reward of 2,500 USDC to 3 citizen NFTs, each to 5 project facilitators, and 1,000 USDC to 1 citizen NFT, each for up to 6 project team members. So this is essentially, it looks as though a way to compensate for the accomplishment of this specific proposal. We'll open up the forum discussion here for folks who are watching on YouTube, and I'll drop a link to the Missouri Governor summation here in the OneHive TV chat channel, and we'll drop it on YouTube as well. Just a second. So you can read on the forum additional details here if you're interested in learning about sort of the guts of the thing. This is, again, it seems to me that this is where the rubber is going to hit the road, or like starting to hit the road, where you know, the acquisition of a small parcel of physical land that then they can experiment with NFT ownership. This is, I would say, broadly speaking, the concept of NFTs representing ownership of real world things is, I think, something highly interesting. Again, something we've talked about with people, but is really emergent, right? It's not, to my knowledge, there aren't a lot of projects you could point to that can say they've done this effectively, you know, successfully and like in a precedent-setting way. If there are examples of this, please, you know, this would be another thing great to drop in the chat channel there, questions if people have them. I think CityDAO has got to be getting as close as anybody to this point. So we'll keep an eye on this story in particular, and come back to chat about it as it moves through the governance process. Again, there is a lot more details, including the intended use for the parcel of land itself. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see this. They have a specific chart at the end of the post that describes everything from co-living to affordable housing to acreage to, you know, all these sorts of retreats, co-working. Anyways, they have a lot of different. They've thought through the details of how to allocate the land in exquisite detail, I think, here. So if you're living in the U.S. if you're living in the U.S. in particular, and you're interested in seeing how sort of the bleeding edge looks like as far as this nexus between the digital and the physical, if you're interested in different types of NFT use case applications, this would be a great example. I think in particular, even if they've sort of success or failure, I think that this concept of using NFTs to represent physical land properties as like a deed, it's enough to sort of really start good conversation with people outside crypto, like no coiners. So if you have like family, friends that are not into crypto, this type of thing is sometimes interesting with folks, because, you know, if they think NFTs is just OpenSea and they send you links of these people getting horribly wrecked in their attempts to make money off JPEGs, if that's their take on crypto and NFTs, this sort of changes the narrative, I think, in an effective way. Even if they haven't, you know, gotten to the point of complete execution, it's the conceptual idea that NFTs represent something as tech, right, that is different than simply PFPs. So again, it's big up to CityDAO. I think they're doing really interesting work. We dropped the link there in chat. And I'm going to go ahead and take a moment here I think that's the end of the list of news we have to share with you for this week. I'm going to get some tunes playing here in the Discord. If people have questions about any of the stuff we talked about, you want to come up on stage and chat about anything before we invite our next guest on, please don't hesitate to do so. We got One Hive TV chat channel just north of the radio stage here. Appreciate all of you that have joined us here in Discord and on YouTube. We'll be back in just a couple minutes to either take questions, answer questions, and then bring on Flow Science at the top of the hour. GM, everybody. All right, folks, so I'm going to spin a tune right now, and this is not streaming on the YouTube side of things, so if you want to get in on the music, you do have to be in the Discord. At this point in time, I don't want to get any red flags there on the YouTube channel. So what I'm going to do on the YouTube side is I'm going to get our nice trusty bee in here to just have the little wait screen. And here in the Discord, I'm going to go ahead and spin a track now by Gramatik. And Gramatik actually is, I'm not going to say he's a crypto native artist. He's been making music since probably before Bitcoin. But he is someone who embraced Bitcoin early. He is somebody who's since come into the ETH space. He's working with he's working on a project called Synthopia, which is a music NFT project that has embedded like profit sharing with NFT holders. So getting more into that in the future. I hope to get him on the show sometime. It would be fucking fantastic, to be honest. I'm sort of a fanboy of his music, and yeah, we'll see. He's I believe Serbian by birth, I think, and I think he lives in Europe these days. But he gets some pretty cool music together, and he, of course, I believe does the piano and mixing, and he's got some other folks that play piano and other instruments. But we'll go ahead and play some of his music here. You can follow him on Twitter. Again, this is Gramatik with a K. Right on. Well, I'd love to start, man. If you just familiarize maybe the audience with yourself. What is your background? How did you? I think enjoy people. They enjoy hearing people's stories of how they intersected with crypto and Web3. Just give a little background on yourself, man.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. So I grew up in New York. First 20-something years. Got tired of the snow. Applied to grad schools in California, and got into UCSB in Santa Barbara in 2011 for grad school. So for molecular biology. So I came out here to California, back then over a decade ago, and I've been here ever since. So studied molecular biology for my doctorate for about 6-7 years, and then towards the end of that program, I was writing my dissertation and trying to figure out what I was going to do. Became pretty disillusioned with the academic path, just the extraordinarily low success rates of people trying to pursue tenured jobs. And like the low pay after such a long amount of time being in school. So I was looking into industry stuff, and it was just like, I had so many ideas for different companies. I've kind of always had an entrepreneurship mindset. I was the kid who sold, Now and Leaders and Pixie Sticks in middle school. So I kind of always been like that. And so, yeah, I just, and I'm a big cannabis advocate. I've been a cannabis consumer, and I know so many people in my life that have been helped tremendously through medical cannabis, and so I'm a big advocate for it, especially having been so kind of like deep in academia and being a public cannabis consumer, like really having to be an advocate in that sense of fighting off the stigma of the stoner, blah blah blah, all that. So it's been a big part of my life, and I was really looking at ways to apply genetic technologies, all the stuff I learned in my PhD, to cannabis in 2016 towards the end there, because it looked like cannabis was going to become recreationally legal here in California. So that was going to change things. There's going to be a lot more people going into it, into the industry. So yeah, I was really looking, sort of really felt like being in the right place at the right time. And I was like, how can I not do this? This is something I really care about. It's a chance to, get some purpose to my work and some freedom. So started my own lab in my garage in 2016 while I was writing my dissertation, and went through some business plan pitch competitions, won some cash, and bought some equipment off eBay used equipment, and just kind of set up shop in my house, setting up doing genomic research on cannabis. I was growing plants. I was literally growing plants for research. Everyone always joked, they're like, yeah, okay, quote unquote research, but it literally was. There was wonderful byproducts, but I was doing genomic research. And basically what I did in that first year was proof of concept, the application of CRISPR technology to cannabis, so gene editing, and drafted up a pretty big, extensive patent application, tried to get it. I did submit it as a provisional, but we tried to raise some capital, didn't go anywhere. So we ended up switching to doing diagnostic testing instead of research. And then the patent just sort of withered away. I recently published it as an IP NFT. So that is available now for anyone to go access.
Hey, wow.
But yeah. So that was fun. So it's on Ocean Market. And that's what we're using for Cannabis Genome DAO as well. So I'll get more into that. But yeah, it's been kind of a wild ride with the genetic testing lab, developing new assays, studying the genome, just being in that sort of space, working with cultivators. But it was really like a very service-oriented business. Still trying to be a tech company and develop new technology. And that's where we started doing like ancestry mapping, like relationship lineage mapping among plants. And that like really brought the problem of data ownership and accessibility and aligning incentives to share data, which is all what Cannabis Genome was about. That really brought all those problems to the forefront when we were studying and starting to do lineage testing for customers, because we take a different approach than most genomic testing companies that have been highly successful. We do not own any of our customer data. We act as consultants. I mean, if you go get a logo from a designer, like the designer doesn't own the logo. So that's what we do as a lab. We do testing. Our customers own their own data, but then this creates data silos. They have no incentive to share the data, right? They're saving it, trying to advance their own products and monetize it in that way. There's no financial incentive to share the data. So that's why we spun up Cannabis Genome DAO last year, nonprofit. It's a unincorporated nonprofit operating under Delaware law. We relied heavily on some guidance from LexDAO during the formation. We got some grant funding from Near Foundation, and so it kind of got things going at the end of last year. Really, as we were first launching the Ancestry service publicly, just trying to get ahead of it and be like, this is the way we're proposing to address this this problem of data availability and ownership. So yeah, that's been kind of just working on that, the tech, writing the we call it the community hyperthesis, the white paper, over the past year, and just deep diving DAOs. I've been a contributor at Bankless DAO since October as well. So I work on Crypto Sapiens over there, which is a podcast network, community podcast network, and do marketing work, group lead. I do a bunch of different stuff in DAOs. DAO Planet, I helped coordinate and produce DAO Denver in partnership with ETH Denver back in February, and then DAO Planet NYC. That was a couple weeks ago, about a month ago. So yeah, just been kind of getting involved with as many sort of governance and community ops sort of roles as I can, just to try and learn firsthand what the hell's going on, and try and bring that back to the Cannabis Genome DAO project. So that's been my life over the past year. It's been, I'm in the lab during the day, and that's where I'm sitting right now. And I've usually got my earbuds in, during Discord calls while I'm like running samples, and then at the end of the day, I get to, hang out and do some, data analysis and coding, whatever, and sort of just build in the evening, make some free time. So that's kind of what I do now on the regular basis. Still crushing it with Delta Leaf Labs. We are trying to raise some capital because that definitely, we haven't had any investors really. I kind of bootstrapped the company on personal credit a couple years ago, which I wouldn't recommend anybody doing, but we did it and it worked, and we got, we had some good growth first couple of years, and now we're trying to raise some capital to continue developing technology and really scale out the company. And the whole point of it is to democratize access to genetic technologies for cannabis for the lab, because we believe cannabis is medicine. All cannabis is medicine. Even people that are using it for to relax, that's a mental health issue. I think there's, honestly, that's my personal belief, but there's there's really wide, objectively, there's really wide medical therapeutic applications of cannabis, and many more unexplored. There's hundreds of therapeutic molecules in cannabis, and we only really focus on two, THC and CBD. Right? There's over 100 cannabinoid gene sequences identified in the genome. I can show you the spreadsheet. Run the search, and we don't know what most of them do. We don't know what molecule is actually produced by that gene, because we don't have the analytics in chemistry labs dialed in to really detect those. The plants aren't producing them enough, whatever reason, but it's unexplored territory, right? People are searching through the jungle trying to find medicinal plants to apply to therapeutic uses. And we've got one sitting right under our nose that has hundreds of therapeutic compounds that are unexplored. So, yeah.
I don't know how much people know here. And part of me just wants to sort of drill down into the cannabis side of things, because it's part of my own, personal interests outside of crypto, and obviously intersecting with crypto here. But yeah, I mean, I first of all, I just got to say, I got to sync with you on Crypto Sapiens. Very cool, man. We got to find some way to synergize there. We're doing similar stuff. Crypto Sapiens, yeah. The other side is, I guess I'm curious, like when it comes to the ancestry service or this lineage mapping, maybe you could just draw out a little bit more on that to give the audience a bit of context on why people care about the genetic lineage of a cannabis plant.
Yeah, really good point. So it's probably what I consider the biggest problem in the cannabis industry, especially when you consider the medical side. Right? Typical Western medicine, you have a purified single molecule that is, you do a randomized clinical trial to identify the LV50 of the population with the average dose for the population. And when you get that, okay, yeah, sure, there's individual variability, but you tested this one drug on a really wide sample of people, and that's your data, right? So it's completely different than whole plant medicine, which is what cannabis has been, right? And a lot of Eastern medicines. And because the ability to quantify what's in the drug, right? It's a mixture of stuff. It's grown, it's a plant, right? You can't really control the fine levels of what's in there. To a certain extent you can, but really you can't. So how do you can't put that through the clinical trial, right? Even if you put a cocktail of two drugs and you submit that to the FDA to get approved for a clinical trial, it's like exponentially more difficult than a single molecule. So our system is just not set up to support that. The paradigms of medicine don't really accommodate that line of thinking. But it's the difference between a scalpel and, or not even a scalpel, but like kind of a net, right? A plant medicine, maybe you're hitting multiple molecular targets, but you're not, slamming them with one particular drug at a really high dose. It's more of a, you don't necessarily have to cut deep. You can just do a broader, more general treatment and get a desired outcome. That's at least my understanding of it. I am not a medical doctor. But when you can figure out what you have genetically, that's the first starting point to getting a consistent therapy. So for patients, right, for anybody trying to use cannabis therapeutically, you have to know what you're getting, right? It's always been, okay, you go to your source, whether that's a dispensary or a friend, and you ask, what do you got? And how do you actually know? There's no authentication there. There's no verification anywhere along the supply chain. So that's why having this lineage mapping is really important.
So I got to ask you a really targeted question then, man. I've always felt as though if people are familiar, either medical or recreational cannabis consumers in the U.S. or elsewhere, the more I've dug in and done my own research, obviously not as a scientist of any means, but it's become my hunch that when certain strains, either of flower or other types of consumables, are labeled as being X, right, indica or X sativa or some percentage of one or the other, I always feel like you need to take that with a gigantic grain of salt if it's nothing more than just marketing. I don't know. I feel like teasing apart these genetic sequences has got to be incredibly difficult, like accurately.
I literally have an hour-long presentation on this topic. It's called Indica and Sativa Are Lies.
Right on. I
It's
got to
one of
see
my
that. Wow.
yeah, it's good. I'll send you the deck. Yeah, it's 100% marketing in terms of the way it's currently used in modern Western cannabis industry. The indica and sativa descriptions are meant to describe what the morphology, the shape of the plant looks like, what it looks like. Indica plants tended to be shorter and squatter, and sativa plants tend to be taller and skinnier, and I think have a little bit longer flowering time. So there's a few growth characteristics that just define those categories, but they've come to be used on the modern market to define sleepy versus awake, where sativa means this is an energizing cannabis that's usually good for daytime, and then indica is generally referred to as the ones that are more sedative. They're going to put you to sleep, and that has to do with generally mostly the terpenoids. So not cannabinoids at all. No THC, no CBD. That has nothing to do with at least what people describe as indica sativa. But there's all these other therapeutic molecules, terpenoids. There's actually a lot of peer-reviewed research on aromatherapy. Pinene, for example, pinene is a terpene. It is found in pine plants, really heavy concentrations. And when you walk through a pine forest, you feel very awake. You feel alert. That is the terpene pinene, and your body reacts to it, and you feel alert. That's the aromatherapy action of pinene. There's a lot of research into the molecular pathways that are being activated there, and there's tons of terpenoids in cannabis that actually share the same biosynthetic precursors as the cannabinoids themselves. So pretty interesting molecules in how they act. And again, that gets back to that broad stroke of plant medicine versus the typical paradigm of what we think in Western medicine.
It's fascinating, and I guess doubling back to what you said earlier, it becomes the idea that you can specifically target, prescribe, and then quantify the expected results of these different plants. It's like disentangling all of this underground genetics and crossbreeding for decades. In a sense, it is the cannabis genome attempting to incentivize individuals to do their own research, and through owning the data, you can generate a total sum of data points that enable you to tease out these different histories of plants. And I'm being very broad. Is that the general idea?
Basically, yeah. I mean, it's relationship mapping. We call it like the Ancestry.com of cannabis. And so if anybody's used Ancestry.com or 23andMe or Genomes.io, a decentralized solution to mapping your human DNA, but they basically have a little dashboard that shows you where your family history is from around the globe, any potential what's it called? Risk factors and genetic risk factors for particular diseases, things like that. They give you a basic report. And so that's kind of what we do for cannabis. We say, okay, this is what, this is the finger, we call it strain fingerprint. Even though strain is not the correct scientific nomenclature, we go with it because that's what everybody uses. But strain fingerprint, we get like a fingerprint. It's basically just one line in the spreadsheet, a row of data that contains unique numbers to identify the plant, and those are calculated based on our actual genome analysis. And basically, if you have the same number as another plant in the same column, then you share a common ancestor because you have the same gene, right? So if two individuals have the same copy of the same gene, right, the same exact sequence, you can basically the rule of thumb goes through Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is that they are related. Those identical sequences had evolved sometime in the past, and these two individuals that you're analyzing now, they share a common ancestor who also had that genetic sequence, and it was just passed down, right? So we have a big panel of these markers, and can compare them between individual plants and say, okay, this one's more related to that. So we create a map. It's you can create a graph essentially of the relatedness between all your samples. You can plot it on multiple dimensions, and it creates fun things. yeah, and then you can say, what is your sample most related to? What's the most distant one? Are there clusters? Can we identify any particular like functional clusters about like you look at a bunch of samples and say, oh, these ones all were submitted and they all were labeled sour diesel, or they were all labeled blue dream, but from different suppliers, right? But boom, the genetic sequences are all like almost identical. Well, okay, these people all actually have blue dream, and then boom, you know what the data is, right? You don't have to be arbitrary. The data can really speak for itself in a lot of these cases.
It's really interesting, and I know that particularly in the cannabis industry, there has been and probably continues to be an emphasis to try to locate these landrace plants, and so at least as a part of the bigger picture and intent of Cannabis Genome DAO, enlisting the work and support of like local research teams in like the Congo and parts of Pakistan, I guess, India. Like, is that of interest? It seems like these specific like real source genes, you got to go to specific geographies to like access them, right?
Yes. Yeah, and this actually brings back a fun thread from when the DAO was really first starting. So when I first sort of was coming up with this idea and talking about it with the Delta Leaf co-founders, I made a LinkedIn post and I was like, it's very simple. Do you think cannabis genome data should be open source? It's still my most widely shared interactive with LinkedIn post I've ever made. And there's tons of responses and they were all overwhelmingly positive, like, yes. And sure, most of these people probably weren't genomics or data experts and things like that, but the sentiment was clear. It was like 87% yes out of like over 100 votes or something. So at that point I was like, all right, this DAO thing is happening. I don't know how, but we're gonna do it. So that's when I started applying for grants and got the Near Foundation grant. But it was that thread of the ownership concept, and that that's really the fundamentals of the DAO. So I started looking for tech to enable that, right? Which now that I guess I didn't really know at the time a year ago, but that language is really the IP NFTs, right? You can have so much data as a non-fungible token that allows you to impart ownership to it and do all sorts of fun DeFi things with it, so that the data itself becomes a sort of monetary primitive, right? A financial primitive. It's like a new class, right? It's got intrinsic value of its own as determined on a market, So it can be really powerful in terms of enabling that and facilitating that sharing of knowledge. And so that's what the goal is of Cannabis Genome DAO, is to enable broad knowledge sharing within any data related to cannabis research or cultivation. So it doesn't have to be genome data. It could be a spreadsheet of cultivation logs. It could be a research paper. So we want to have a micro-publication platform built on top of the marketplace. And so, and then ultimately the third layer will be a decentralized seed bank and herbarium. So members of the DAO who earn credentials through our automated reputation credentialing systems. So we've got SourceCred hooked up in the Discord, Discourse, and GitHub. So really trying to make full Web3 tech stack to track reputation. We've got a proposed contribution score model, basically to integrate different types of contributions, whether that be financial effort, and governance and different contributions, and can sort of weight them and then build it all into a model, so that we can hopefully have contribution score weighted voting, maybe even contribution weighted conviction voting. Who knows?
Hey.
But yeah, it's I think the opportunities are pretty broad.
And it's a chance to take a look at the thesis doc you sent, and a lot of interesting details there, particularly on the contributor, the contributor, I guess, reputation or incentives there, and how you're considering and breaking that down across various platforms, and enabling people with different skill sets to contribute. Like, so if people are in the audience right now and interested in getting involved in the cannabis genome research or just the DAO in general, definitely follow them on Twitter. And we have the webpage up here on YouTube, of course, cannabisgeno.me. There you go. I'll drop the link again. Actually, I think it already is in the One Hype TV chat channel. But I just want to pause for a second and encourage people, give them a little CTA there. If you are listening to the broadcast and you like what you're hearing, follow Cannabis Genome DAO on Twitter, follow Flow Science on Twitter, check out their Discord. As far as the calibrating the contributor scheme, right, and how to weight and measure those things, what have been some of the most interesting challenges you and your team have sort of run across when you're thinking about how to craft that system?
It's there's so many options. Like I said earlier, the design space is pretty broad, as I'm sure many people here know. But finding what is, finding those sort of things you can maybe not quantify, but qualitatively say, okay, this is the reason we're going with this. And so in quantifying the contributions, that's generally the way you're trying to move that conversation forward. It's like, okay, well, what is the qualitative benefit of, or pros and cons, right? And so the biggest challenge, I think, is just ultimately it is a pretty complex model. I think the intention is to make the outcome, the experience, simple and abstracted away, but that does basically it's led to more of a at least for now, more of a complicated, I think, approach, because we are taking all these different contributions and then trying to compare them and evaluate them against each other, right, when they're completely different categories. So that's a big challenge as well. So Near has been super supportive. There was our first grant funder, but there was really no commitment to build on them at that point. It was still pretty early on. But the thing that has really solidified the decision to continue building on Near has been their focus from the very start on simplifying user experience and abstracting away a lot of the underlying tech, right? And so both for the end user as well as the developer, and so their focus on user experience has been the main deciding factor for onboarding people from the cannabis industry, right? Non-crypto natives.
Got it.
And so if that's our goal, right, is to do that, then we need to choose technology that's going to be most amenable to it, and ultimately it was Near. And so that was why the ease of setting up a wallet. You can basically set up a wallet for somebody and just send them a claim link, and it's super simple. The browser wallet, and so that's my experience. Just sort of exploring the Near ecosystem has been that the dApps are simple. They work. It's fast. It's reliable, and the team's been really good in shipping solid tech. We all know about bridge hacks that happened last year. There was a bridge hack that happened at Aurora, but don't understand the details. But they were able to I think essentially catch the faulty blocks before it was able to hit anything, and that was ultimately, I know that was the outcome, is that nothing was affected at all.
Right.
The CEO Alexi posted a pretty detailed thread, and I was like, okay, this is over my head, but I get the outcome here. Nothing went wrong. And
funds are set.
Pretty, funds are set. So the tech's been great. Everything that I think's been thrown at it, every question I've had has been satisfactorily answered. I just feel really comfortable with the tech. The ecosystem has been super positive. So, but ultimately, it does come down to that onboarding for non-crypto natives in the cannabis industry, which is our target audience, right? For the unlocking this data, right? Any sort of cannabis knowledge, right?
Let me draw you out on that a little bit too. So, because I think that a lot of people are thinking about ways to, use the tech that we have and these new, ways of aligning incentives, et cetera. Using crypto, bridging it over to the meat space, as it were. We were talking about this earlier a bit with just the news covering CityDAO, but even in my locality, people are considering integrating crypto incentives to certain education initiatives at schools. I mean, ultimately, the question I'm trying to come to is saying, what are some of your thoughts on the pitch, right? In this case, if you have somebody in the cannabis industry who's capable of generating this data, but they don't know anything about NFTs other than Bored Apes, like what has some of your conversation been with like some of those people that you found most persuasive at sort of winning them over and getting them interested in what we're building?
Well, I should say that we're not the only project working on specifically cannabis genome data, like getting that on chain. So I guess the most convincing thing, majority, I think, of the active, and that's what we're facing too. We're facing this onboarding challenge. So if it's not crypto, it's Discord. So most people in Canada are like, why am I going to sign up to this thing with 50 notifications a day? So we don't do that in Cannabis Genome DAO. Try not to use everyone tags, but that's it's just stuff like that. It's every step of the way that the challenge has been onboarding. And so I know that there are a bunch of groups within our DAO that are sort of they have Slack, one group has a Slack channel, a couple others are sort of working on other projects, and so just uniting those different fronts has been the challenge. But the thing that really I think sets people on the idea is just the ownership, the community-based ownership of the marketplace and governance of that. I can't say governance, but that once people really get that, that is the and also the reputation. Some people get pretty into the whole idea of reputation and credentialing because it's a pretty broad theme in DeSci in general, right? And I mean just Web3, right? But especially for science, when you need to fund a project or publish something or peer review something or be a seed bank steward or whatever it is, those credentials I think are super important. And so some people get really, they hear that sort of thing and they're like, whoa, like that's the game changer.
You can own the data that you present. Obviously, Ocean Protocol is a critical partnership in here. The DeSci scheme of things. What's your experience been like with Ocean Protocol?
One of the most fantastic technical teams I've ever seen. And so, they are super high level. I was able to just join the Discord, and even though they were talking some super technical stuff, very friendly, welcoming, I was on the core tech calls for a while, just really trying to dive in and understand the direction of the project and where things have been, but and people there. But even on those core tech calls, right? Like my background is more in science, and I can do some data analysis and informatics and things like that. But when it comes to like heavy dev work, I'm a copy paster. I can write a couple scripts in Python and stuff, but being in those channels and hearing the more technical stuff, but being able to just dive into any aspect of the protocol, the DAO, and having that strong technical support from the community. They're also super active on the Discord. They're just a very friendly community. So if anyone's not familiar with Ocean Team, I would highly recommend it because they're great, highly organized and effective contributors, super professional.
They seem to have a great funding mechanism in place too for projects that are really dedicated to data and the science.
Right. Like you mentioned, the contribution score is kind of our idiosyncratic thing. I think theirs is, at least in my view, this, called the Web3 sustainability loop. That was an article one of the co-founders, Trent, wrote a couple of years ago. That really, I think, to me, is still the best way to explain refi to anybody, with diagram. And it's just a very simple, mint token, distribute with grant, blah, blah, blah. Do project, create value. Value goes back to treasury in some way. And with Ocean, that's through a fee on the marketplace. With Cult DAO, they have the fee as well, right? So there's this regenerative loop that or step that closes the loop and enables the project to be sustainable. Um, and that concept, bringing that into Cannabis Genome DAO, I think has been essential for building out the entire, white paper and hypothesis. Is that that concept, right, and really being focused on that sustainable, regenerative, financial loop for the ecosystem of participants and contributors that came from Ocean.
Totally. Well, and capturing as much of that as possible. It's, I saw y'all integrated a number of the tools we've been experimenting with here at OneHive over the past as well. And SourceCred and others are really interesting tools that, with the right calibration, I think could be super, super cool to see how it helps to incentivize people, right, to really build something cool. The broader DeSci like space, it seems a lot of people are interested in creating, marketplaces either for data or for other projects have been doing like impact, NFTs. Can you share a little bit about what you envision, what the sort of the Cannabis Genome, the marketplace will actually be like?
Yeah. So I mentioned there's a couple other projects out there, and so we kind of imagine that the Genome DAO marketplace will be sort of like a nexus, like an interface where the more primitive pieces of a larger narrative can be published, right? So, for example, you can publish a individual strain fingerprint, you can publish a individual genome sequence, you can publish a individual article, a botanical description, right? A individual piece of data. I think that breaking it down in that reductionist sense to the individual units allows researchers to have an actual minimum publishable unit where they can publish faster, they can get the data out there, they can immediately put it on the market and have that be, the value be determined and get the value back, get retroactive funding or whatever that is, to continue their work. And so I think that is definitely core.
Very cool. Well, if folks are interested again to get involved here and learn a little bit more, either if you're like a cannabis enthusiast advocate, if you're somebody who is interested in decentralized science and data, if you're somebody who has heard of the Ocean Protocol, interested in projects building with and on that project, definitely check out Cannabis Genome DAO. So we have the links if you're looking for them, in OneHive TV chat channel above the stage. You can see them there. You can also check out, if you're looking on YouTube, check out the CSAT Genome. So CSAT Genome is the handle on Twitter. And of course, you should give Flow Science a follow as well. He is at Flow_Science on Twitter there. And I had this tweet up here that you shared earlier, man. I wanted to ask a bit about. I know you had mentioned that you're considering various options going forward as far as I think capital formation, and you had considering an exit to community instead of VC. And if you wanted to speak to that a bit, I found that interesting.
Yeah, and that's actually for the lab. So in this journey through the DAO, there's always been the question of, okay, well, how does this align with the lab? And all the investors, right? Everybody's always just been like, okay, well, you guys are going to own that data, right? And no, our terms and conditions have always been that we do not. So that's, the finding that alignment was, it took some time. And at this point, the plan is to have the Delta Leaf app have a checkbox smart contract integration where customers can, or users can then take their data from their personal instance of the app and then choose to publish it to the DAO marketplace using Delta Leaf as a custodian. So they wouldn't actually have to go to the DAO marketplace and go through the publication process themselves. They would, just using our interface and basically just be able to check a box. That's see the terms and conditions for what that entails and set their parameters right there from within the app, and manage all their data. So it'd be a sort of a custom front end interface as well. And so Delta Leaf would act as a custodian and have its small fee as well. And so that would be the way that Delta Leaf would have alignment with the DAO and not, have some sort of financial incentive to then try and hoard data itself. I'm trying to also plan for the future where hopefully this company is successful enough where I don't have to be the CEO forever. I mean, it'd be great to be. I wanted to stay involved, but ultimately, for a company to be scalable, anything, whatever, right? Like you have to plan for to change things over.
Of course.
And I don't want to see the company, be corrupted in that way. I think we have an opportunity now with cannabis to set a different standard. It's kind of like when the human genome was first published. It was made public. It was almost the first human genome sequence was almost completed by a private company, and they almost tried to patent it, right? But it was a race between this private company and between NIH-funded research at MIT. So that was, that's what's happening with cannabis right now. And I think we have this opportunity to set a different standard, and especially with Web3 and the ownership economy of data, where individuals control all of their data, right? It's now's the chance. Otherwise, there's been other companies, right? There's other labs that are doing this testing. One of them actually had a major PR snafu with they basically were doing this testing, the same sort of ancestry stuff for years, and then turned around and started their own breeding program and competing directly with all of their customers. Right. And saying they weren't using the data, but we all know what's going on there. So that was fun for us as a business, but it would also just allowed us to highlight where we were different, and from the start. So that's what I think with the DAO now. Getting back to your original question, is continuing to find that alignment between the lab and the DAO. Delta Leaf's raising capital, and I think it would be a wonderful, fantastic, precedent to set for the DAO to own a physical lab. It would be really impressive if the DAO could raise enough to do that in one round. But Delta Leaf's been a successful company, and so we have good revenue. And I think for the DAO, for what we're trying to raise right now, for our current round, the DAO could fill that need if there was enough community support. So published an article last week, sort of detailing what that would look like, what the details of the Delta Leaf fundraise currently are, and how that would translate to a fundraise on Mirror, so that the Cannabis Genome DAO could purchase a membership stake in Delta Leaf Laboratories LLC, and then distribute the governance rights to CGD members through a different token, through a second token specifically for the lab.
Interesting.
And so you mentioned earlier CSAT, that is the Cannabis Sativa token. That would be for the DAO, and there'd be a separate token for the lab, specifically for governance. And so I think that's kind of the plan, just trying to get as much feedback as possible, and refine that before potentially launching Mirror crowdfund. But it's been pretty good support so far, so I think that's probably pretty imminent.
That's awesome. I mean, folks, if you're here, listening today, GM to everybody, thank you for joining us. If you're interested in what you're hearing here, this is a highly interesting real use case project here, being built around decentralized science. I think that it's a great time to get involved. Obviously, in particular, as we said, if you have a specific interest in this space, and the topic that we're discussing in particular. If you have any insights or questions, please feel free to drop them in the One Hive TV chat channel. We can take those. We always like to respond to people's thoughts, ideas going forward. If you have anything that particularly relates to this conversation, please don't hesitate to leave it there, or on YouTube if you're watching over there. Well, I wanted Flow Science, if you wanted to sort of wrap up here, if you had any specific CTAs for the audience, things you wanted them to do or ways they can get involved, trying to do my best I can here to remind them. But if there's anything specific I'm either missing or you'd like to add, man, go for it.
No, you're fantastic. I'm taking notes from you, especially for cryptosapien stuff. So thank you. But I think the main things I would say is follow us on Twitter. Most of the updates go out there. The website is constantly being updated. There are links to all of our other documentation, Notion, everything is through the website and Discord. So yeah, definitely, the main places you would think to go for Web3 project. We also have Giveth and Gitcoin fundraisers open. So we were just in GR14 last round. We'll be in the next one unless something changes. But we do also have Giveth, and we're accepting donations. So we are a completely grant funded project. We have not allocated a token yet. But anybody who is a governance or tokenization expert, there are plenty of opportunities to build a wonderful real work impact project. So definitely open to any and all contributors. I mean, I think that is the goal of this project as well, is to create a permissionless governance of cannabis data. And so, just really trying to strive towards that.
Super bullish. I mean, on so many levels here, I really like, hearing you talk about ways that this can offer a new path forward for just genomics research and data in general, and sort of perhaps and hopefully avoiding pitfalls of, previous experiences. I still remember I was rather young at the time. I still remember that and reading about stories attempting to patent the human genome. And in this case, I'm sure as you can tease out these different genetic lineages, et cetera, of cannabis, there'll be all sorts of folks who would rather profit off that rather than share the data. So very exciting, man. I really appreciate you joining us today. We got to find some ways to collaborate with either Crypto Sapiens or other similar stuff related to Cannabis Genome DAO. Been great having you, man.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I know I got to get more active on the server. I've been on the One Hive server for a long time now, but thank you again for inviting me on. It's been a fantastic conversation, so appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. You have a great rest of your week, and everybody in the audience, again, GMT all, thank you for spending some time your Monday with us, and we'll see you next week. You'd like to tune in tomorrow evening at 9:30. I'm going to be live with Billy. We'll be talking the latest in news. Of course, Billy Jitsu brings some really super awesome insights on the dev side. So everybody have a great day, good rest of the week, and we'll chat soon. GM, everybody.